Why are you staring and speaking to her like that? Ma'am, why won't she get the same meal as us?
I don't serve people like her.
That's not fair. You don't like our nanny. Treat her like everyone else.
Serve her first class, exactly like the rest of us.
That moment, that singular confrontation, didn't happen in isolation. It was the culmination of 8 years of love, loyalty, and the kind of quiet suffering that Miss Simone had endured in silence. This is the story of how 3 6-year-old children taught an entire airplane cabin what courage really looks like. Miss Simone had been with the Harrison family since the triplets, Excel, Success, and Leo, were 6 months old. 8 years of being the constant presence when business trips pulled Mr. and Mrs. Harrison away. She wasn't just their nanny. She was family. Your family, Miss Simone, Excel had said once, her serious little face looking up with conviction. You're the person we love most in the whole world, Success had added. And Leo, quiet Leo, had simply whispered, don't ever leave us. But love doesn't always translate to equality. And Miss Simone knew that painful truth better than most. The morning of their trip to New York started like any high-profile journey. The Harrison family's sleek SUV pulled up to LAX private terminal. Mr. James Harrison in his tailored suit, the 6-year-old triplets bursting with excitement, and Miss Simone carrying their extra bags. The stares began immediately. They always did. A businessman glanced at her, then at the Harrison family, confusion flickering across his face. A woman in diamonds looked her up and down, judgment settling into the lines around her mouth. Miss Simone felt each stare like a physical touch. She had spent 38 years perfecting her response. The lifted chin, the neutral expression, the steady gait. But perfecting the exterior didn't stop the interior from fracturing. Boarding was smooth. Their first-class seats were luxurious. Cream leather, personal entertainment screens, golden ambient lighting. Excel claimed the window seat immediately. Success settled in the middle. Leo took the aisle seat beside Miss Simone. Mr. Harrison sat across the aisle, already opening his laptop. Miss Simone smoothed her navy dress as she settled in, ensuring each child had their seatbelt fastened properly. Everything was perfect. Everything was organized. And that's when she felt it. The stare. It burned into the side of her face like a physical brand. She turned slowly and met the eyes of the flight attendant standing at the galley entrance. Ms. Whitmore was in her mid-40s, blonde hair pulled back severely, uniform immaculate. But her expression was cold. Unmistakably cold. She wasn't looking at Miss Simone with professional courtesy. She was looking at her like an intruder. Someone who doesn't belong. Miss Simone's stomach dropped. She recognized this look. She had seen it 1,000 times before. The look that said, "You don't belong here." The first-class cabin filled with other passengers. Miss Simone noticed the subtle glances, some curious, some disapproving, all of them trying to piece together why she was sitting here with 3 white children. The cabin door closed. Safety demonstration began. The plane pushed back from the gate. Then pre-flight beverage service started. Ms. Whitmore emerged from the galley with her cart, smile bright and professional as she served each passenger. "Good morning. What can I get for you today?" Row by row, she worked through the cabin with warmth and courtesy. Until she reached row 2. She stopped at Mr. Harrison first, smile still bright. "Good morning, sir. Can I offer you something to drink?" "Just water, thank you." She poured it carefully, added lemon, set it down with a flourish. Then she turned to the children, her smile growing wider. "And what about these lovely little ones?" "Apple juice," Leo said excitedly. "Orange juice for me, please," Success added politely. "Water like my dad," Excel said seriously. "Wonderful choices. Coming right up." Ms. Whitmore served them with exaggerated care, her voice sing-song. "There you go, sweethearts. Enjoy." The children thanked her in unison, already sipping their beverages. Ms. Whitmore's cart moved forward. She was now directly beside Miss Simone's row. And everything changed. The smile vanished like someone had flipped a switch. Her movements became mechanical. She didn't look at Miss Simone. Didn't make eye contact. Didn't offer the cheerful greeting. Instead, she reached into her cart, pulled out a single plain dinner roll wrapped in plastic, and dropped it onto Miss Simone's tray table. Thud. No beverage. No crystal glass. No napkin. No plate. Just dry bread. Miss Simone stared at the bread roll. Her jaw tightened. Her fingers curled into fists. Her breathing remained controlled, but her nostrils flared. She wanted to speak. God, how she wanted to speak. Why am I being treated differently? Do you have any idea how degrading this is? But she stayed silent. Because she knew exactly what would happen if she spoke up. She would be labeled aggressive, difficult, the angry black woman. She would be the problem, not the person treating her with contempt. So she sat frozen, her dignity held together by sheer force of will and years of practice at swallowing her pain. Ms. Whitmore was already moving away, her smile returning as she greeted the next passengers. But the children saw everything. Excel had been watching through the gap between seats. She saw the bright smile for her father, the exaggerated cheerfulness for her siblings, and the complete transformation when Ms. Whitmore reached Miss Simone. She saw the smile disappear, saw the bread being dropped carelessly, saw the absence of basic courtesy. Excel turned to Success and Leo. A look was enough, a slight nod. The way Leo's mouth pressed into a thin line. They knew. They understood. They recognized injustice. Excel slipped out of her seat, moving into the aisle with purpose. Her whisper carried perfectly. Why are you staring and speaking to her like that? Ms. Whitmore froze, startled. Excuse me? Success and Leo stood immediately, flanking their sister. 3 children shoulder to shoulder, united. Excel stepped forward, her gaze locked on the flight attendant's face. Ma'am, why won't she get the same meal as us? The cabin went quiet. Conversations died. Heads turned. Ms. Whitmore's face flushed. The meal service is. We're all in first class, Success cut in sharply. We all have the same seats. Why does Miss Simone only get bread when everyone else gets a full meal? Excel's voice dropped lower but carried more weight. Ma'am, we asked you a question. Why are you treating her differently? Ms. Whitmore's face cycled through emotions. Embarrassment, anger, resentment. Her voice came out tight, dripping with contempt. I don't serve people like her. The words landed like a grenade. Excel's eyes went wide, her face registering profound shock and hurt. Success's mouth fell open, outrage flooding her features. Leo stepped back, his face crumpling. And Miss Simone's eyes closed briefly, raw pain flickering across her face. This wasn't the first time she'd heard variations of those words. But hearing them said so baldly, in front of the children she loved, it cut deeper than any previous instance. Her hands were shaking now, trembling visibly. She pressed them against her thighs, trying desperately to still them. Success found her voice first. That's not fair. You don't like our nanny? Excel's voice came again, steady despite the emotion. Treat her like everyone else. The cabin was completely silent now. Every person was watching. And then Mr. Harrison stood up. His 6'3" frame unfolded with deliberate precision. He stepped into the aisle, his hand resting on Excel's shoulder. His voice was quiet but carried absolute authority. Serve her first class. Exactly like the rest of us. It wasn't a request. It was a command. Ms. Whitmore's eyes widened. Of course I didn't mean. Now, Mr. Harrison said, even quieter but more forceful. Ms. Whitmore nodded jerkily, turned to her cart with trembling hands. She grabbed a crystal flute and poured champagne, the liquid sloshing. Then she pulled out the full first-class service. Fresh fruit, warm croissants, delicate pastries, yogurt parfait, cheese and crackers. She approached Miss Simone's seat, eyes fixed somewhere over her shoulder. I apologize for the error. Please enjoy your flight. She set the tray down with too much force and practically fled to the galley, face burning crimson. The triplets stood another moment before climbing back into their seats. Excel immediately reached over, her small hand finding Miss Simone's. Are you okay, Miss Simone? Miss Simone looked at the food she should have received from the beginning. Then at Excel's concerned face, Success's protective glare, Leo's worried eyes. Her throat felt tight. Her voice when it came was soft and cracked. I'm okay, sweetheart. Thank you. Thank you for standing up for me. But she wasn't okay. Not really. Because along with relief came waves of complicated emotions. Shame that she had needed 6-year-olds to fight her battles. Shame that she had been too afraid to demand basic dignity. But also gratitude. Profound gratitude for these children who saw injustice and refused to accept it. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button right now. These stories matter. These conversations matter. Drop a comment. Have you ever witnessed discrimination on a flight? What would you have done? The plane climbed through clouds into brilliant sunshine. The seatbelt sign dinged off. The cabin relaxed. A different flight attendant approached. Not Ms. Whitmore, but Sarah, younger with kind eyes. Excuse me. I wanted to apologize for what happened. That was completely unacceptable. Ms. Whitmore has been removed from first-class service for the remainder of the flight. Miss Simone looked up, surprised. Oh, thank you. If you need anything at all, please press your call button. I'll be taking care of your section. Excel had been listening. Miss Simone, what does removed from first-class service mean? Miss Simone chose her words carefully. It means Ms. Whitmore won't be serving passengers in this section anymore. Someone else, Sarah, will take care of us. Good, Success said firmly. She was mean. She deserved it. She was more than mean, Excel corrected. She was unfair. There's a difference. Mr. Harrison leaned across the aisle. Excel's right. Mean is when someone is unkind. Unfair is when someone treats people differently based on things that shouldn't matter, like skin color. What Ms. Whitmore did was both. Leo scrunched his face, thinking hard. But why would someone do that? Why be unfair on purpose? It was a question Miss Simone had been asking for 38 years. Mr. Harrison considered carefully. Sometimes people are taught to think certain groups are less important. Maybe by their parents or community. Sometimes they're scared of people different from them, and fear turns into hatred. And sometimes they're just unkind people who use those differences as an excuse. That's stupid, Success declared bluntly. Really, really stupid. It is, Mr. Harrison agreed. But it's also real. It happens every day. That's why it's so important that when you see it, you speak up. Just like you did today. The children absorbed this, their young faces serious. Miss Simone felt her chest tighten with emotion. She wanted to add her perspective, to share the reality she lived every day. But she couldn't. Even now, she felt the weight of expectation. The need to be gracious, to not make things uncomfortable, to not be the angry black woman. Sarah returned with beverages and warm towels, deliberately serving Miss Simone first with genuine warmth. After Sarah moved on, Leo tugged Miss Simone's sleeve. Miss Simone, are you sure you're okay? Really, truly okay? She looked at his earnest face. I promise, sweetheart. I'm better because of you and your sisters. Because we stood up for you? Yes. Because you stood up when I couldn't. That means more than you know. Excel was still watching with those thoughtful eyes. Miss Simone? Yes, honey? Does that happen to you a lot? People being unfair because of your skin color? The question was so direct, so impossibly difficult. Miss Simone looked at Excel's serious face, at Success and Leo listening, and chose honesty. Sometimes, she said softly. Yes. Sometimes people treat me differently because of how I look. That's not fair, Success said fiercely. No, it's not. Why don't you tell them they're being unfair? Excel asked, genuinely confused. Why don't you make them treat you right? How did you explain to a 6-year-old the complex calculus of survival as a black woman in white spaces? The fear of being labeled difficult or aggressive. Sometimes, Miss Simone said carefully, speaking up can make things worse. People get defensive or angry. And sometimes, she paused. Sometimes I'm just tired. It takes energy to constantly defend your right to be treated with dignity. Sometimes you run out of energy. Excel absorbed this, troubled. But if nobody says anything, how will they know they're wrong? How will anything change? Such a simple question. Such a profound question. You're right, Miss Simone said quietly. Someone does need to say something. I'm just so grateful that today that someone was you. The children returned to their activities with youthful resilience. But Miss Simone sat with Excel's question echoing. If nobody says anything, how will they know they're wrong? Meal service came, beautifully plated salmon, truffle risotto, herb-grilled chicken. The children ate enthusiastically, sharing bites, their earlier upset already fading. After the meal, Leo dozed off. Success continued her movie marathon. Excel pulled out a thick book about space exploration. Miss Simone reclined her seat slightly, accepting wine from Sarah, and let her eyes drift closed. But even with closed eyes, she couldn't shake the hypervigilance. Years of being a black woman in America had taught her never to fully let her guard down. A soft touch made her eyes open. Excel had put down her book. Miss Simone? Yes, sweetheart. I'm sorry people are mean to you. I'm sorry the world is like this. Miss Simone felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back. Thank you, honey. That's very kind. We won't let anyone be mean to you. Not ever again. We'll always stand up for you. It was a promise Excel couldn't possibly keep. The world would be mean again, tomorrow and next week for the rest of her life. But the fact that this child wanted to make that promise meant everything. You're very brave, Miss Simone whispered. All three of you. The bravest children I've ever known. Excel smiled. Daddy says bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about doing the right thing even when you are scared. Your daddy is absolutely right. 3 hours into the flight, somewhere over the Midwest, Miss Simone found herself in rare stillness. The children were occupied. Mr. Harrison was working. The cabin was quiet. And in that stillness, everything she'd been holding back began to surface. She thought about Ms. Whitmore dropping that bread. The casual cruelty. The certainty that Miss Simone didn't deserve the same treatment. And her own response, the paralysis, the silence, the acceptance. The way she had stayed quiet because speaking up felt more dangerous than enduring humiliation. She thought about all the other times. The boutique where the sales associate followed her, assuming she was there to shoplift. The parent at school who asked if she was there to pick up her employer's children. The police officer who pulled her over for driving suspiciously in the Harrisons' neighborhood. Small humiliations. Tiny cuts. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. And Excel's question. If nobody says anything, how will they know they're wrong? Success climbed out of her seat and settled on Miss Simone's armrest, wrapping small arms around her neck. I'm sorry she was mean to you. But we fixed it. We made her treat you right. Miss Simone hugged her back. You did. You absolutely did. And we'll do it again if anyone else is mean to you. We'll always protect you. Excel looked up from her book again. Miss Simone, can I ask something? Of course. Does it happen because you're black? The directness stole her breath. In 8 years, the children had never explicitly named her race this way. Yes, Miss Simone said quietly. Most of the time, yes. It happens because I'm black and some people think that means I'm worth less. Leo had woken up. But why does that matter? Why do people care what color someone's skin is? Mr. Harrison closed his laptop. May I help explain? Miss Simone nodded gratefully. A long time ago, Mr. Harrison began, some people decided skin color determined value. They made up lies about people with darker skin being less intelligent, less human. It was wrong then and it's wrong now. But those ideas got passed down, like an ugly inheritance. Even though most people today know it's wrong, those ideas still linger in how people think and act. So Ms. Whitmore learned to be mean to black people from her parents? Excel asked. Maybe. Or from her community, or her own misinterpreted experiences. The important thing is it can be unlearned. People can choose to be better. Did she choose to be better when we told her? Success asked sharply. She was forced to change her behavior, Mr. Harrison corrected. Whether she actually learned anything, whether her heart changed, I don't know. Sometimes behavior change comes first and understanding follows. Sometimes people just learn to hide prejudice better. Miss Simone felt emotion overwhelming her. The Harrisons were different from other families she'd worked for. They were actively raising their children to see injustice and name it, to recognize privilege and use it well. It shouldn't have been revolutionary. It should have been basic. But it was revolutionary because it was so desperately rare. Miss Simone, Excel said suddenly, I wish you could always speak freely. I wish you didn't have to be scared. But I'm glad we could use our voices for you. Miss Simone's breath caught. Excel had intuited exactly what she'd been thinking. What do you mean, honey? You couldn't say anything because you were scared. But we could because we're kids and we're white and people listen to us differently. They don't think we're being aggressive. So we said what you couldn't. But I wish the world was different. I wish you could say it yourself. It was such a clear analysis of privilege and power that tears sprang to Miss Simone's eyes. You're very smart, Excel. I know, Excel said simply. But I wish being smart could fix this. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. Have you ever taught a child about fairness and discrimination? How did you explain it? Share your approach in the comments. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. We've begun our descent into JFK. We should be on the ground in approximately 30 minutes. The cabin came to life. The children pressed faces to windows, desperate to see New York. I don't see it yet, Leo said. We're still too high, Excel explained. First we'll see New Jersey, then the Hudson, then Manhattan. I can't wait. Success bounced. Real New York. Miss Simone moved into her familiar role, ensuring tablets were stowed, seatbelts fastened, everything organized. But underneath the routine, her mind was elsewhere, still processing everything. About 20 minutes before landing, Excel put down her book decisively. I want to write a story. About what, sweetheart? Miss Simone asked. About today. About what happened on the plane. About standing up to people who are unfair. Success looked up. Can I be in it? Of course. You and Leo and Miss Simone and Daddy. We're all in it. What happens in the story? Leo asked. Excel thought carefully. There are kids on a plane with a nanny they love. A mean flight attendant is unfair to the nanny because of skin color. The kids stand up and make her apologize. And everyone learns you have to treat all people the same. That fairness isn't optional. That speaking up is necessary. That's a good story, Success approved. It's a true story, Leo added quietly. It's what we did. Excel looked at Miss Simone. Will you help me write it at the hotel? Help me get the words right. Miss Simone felt her throat tighten. I would be honored. And maybe we can turn it into a real book? With pictures? So other kids can learn about fairness. Maybe we can do exactly that. The plane descended lower. New York emerged, sprawling suburbs, the glittering Hudson, and finally Manhattan's unmistakable skyline. It's huge, Leo breathed, his small hands pressed against the window. Look at all those buildings. Success exclaimed, her face lighting up with wonder. Excel was quieter, more analytical. There are approximately 216 buildings over 500 feet tall in Manhattan. But the total number of all buildings is much higher. Mr. Harrison smiled at their excitement. What do you want to see first when we get there? The Statue of Liberty. Leo said immediately. Times Square. Success countered. The Museum of Natural History, Excel said firmly. I want to see the dinosaurs. We'll see all of it, Mr. Harrison promised. We have 2 whole weeks. The plane touched down smoothly. The children cheered, clapping. Other passengers smiled at their enthusiasm, some joining in the applause, that collective relief of a safe landing. As they prepared to deplane, a woman in her 60s stopped beside their row. She addressed Miss Simone directly, eyes kind. Excuse me. I just wanted to say how sorry I am for what happened earlier. That was absolutely unacceptable. And I wanted to tell you how impressed I was by your grace in handling it. And by these wonderful children. You're clearly raising them beautifully. Miss Simone's throat tightened. Thank you. That's very kind of you to say. No, thank you. Thank you for your dignity. And thank you, she said, addressing the children, for being brave enough to speak up. The world needs more children like you. The woman nodded once more and moved on, but her words lingered. You're raising them beautifully. It was an assumption that Miss Simone was their mother or primary parent. In truth, she was their nanny and employee. But the words acknowledged something deeper than employment. The love, the dedication, the profound investment she'd made in shaping these children's lives and values. They filed off the plane, joining the stream of passengers heading toward baggage claim. As they passed through first class, Miss Simone caught a glimpse of Ms. Whitmore standing near the galley entrance, her face carefully neutral, her eyes avoiding contact with everyone, her posture rigid with what might have been embarrassment or resentment or both. For a moment their eyes met. Miss Simone saw something in Ms. Whitmore's expression, something she couldn't quite name. Embarrassment, certainly. Resentment, probably. But underneath there might have been something else. Shame, perhaps. Or the first uncomfortable stirrings of understanding. Or maybe Miss Simone was being generous. Maybe Ms. Whitmore had learned nothing, would go home and complain about oversensitive passengers and bratty children who didn't know their place. Miss Simone looked away first, following the children down the jetway into the terminal, leaving Ms. Whitmore behind, literally and figuratively. Excel grabbed Miss Simone's hand immediately as they entered the crowded terminal. Miss Simone, stay close. Don't get lost. It was sweet, this protective instinct, this reversal where the child looked out for the adult. They collected their luggage, 6 pieces arriving intact. A driver was waiting outside with a Harrison sign, loading bags into a sleek black SUV while the children exclaimed over the vehicle's features. The drive into Manhattan took nearly an hour through heavy traffic. The children pressed faces to windows, taking everything in. The other vehicles, the buildings growing taller, the bridges, the skyline rising to meet them with every mile. Miss Simone sat in the back row with Leo, watching the city scroll past, her thoughts still on the plane, on Ms. Whitmore's words, on the children's fierce defense, on everything that had shifted during those 5 hours in the air. Miss Simone? Leo's voice was soft. Yes, sweetheart. Are you happy we're in New York? She looked at his earnest face, still worried about her even after everything had been resolved. Yes, Leo. I'm very happy we're here. Good. Because we're going to have the best time ever. All of us together. They arrived at the hotel, a luxury property in Midtown with marble floors and crystal chandeliers. The staff greeted them warmly, whisking away luggage, escorting them to a suite on the 20th floor with breathtaking views of Central Park. The children immediately ran to the windows, exclaiming over the view, pointing out landmarks, already making plans. Mr. Harrison tipped the bellhop and turned to Miss Simone. Your room is connected through that door. Take time to settle in, unpack, rest if you need to. We'll meet for dinner in a couple hours. There's a restaurant downstairs, modern American cuisine. He hesitated. I really am sorry about what happened on the plane. You shouldn't have had to experience that. And I should have intervened sooner. Miss Simone shook her head gently. You intervened exactly when you needed to. And your children were extraordinary. Truly extraordinary. They learned that from watching you, he said simply. Your dignity, your grace, your strength, they see all of that. They absorb it. It shapes who they're becoming. You're not just their nanny, Miss Simone. You're teaching them how to be good humans. That matters more than any of us can fully express. She didn't know what to say. Her throat felt too tight for words. She nodded, blinking rapidly to keep tears from falling, and retreated to her room. Her room was beautiful. King bed with crisp white linens, plush sofa, desk with a view, bathroom with a deep soaking tub. She set down her bag and walked to the window, looking out over Central Park. She thought about the day. About the journey. About the children's questions and Mr. Harrison's support and Ms. Whitmore's cruelty and her own silence that had been broken by 3 6-year-olds. She thought about Excel's question that wouldn't stop echoing. If nobody says anything, how will they know they're wrong? She pulled out her phone and typed a message to her sister. Something happened on the flight today. It was hard. But also, maybe good? I think something shifted. Love you. Her sister responded immediately. Can't wait to hear about it. Call me when you can. Love you too. Miss Simone smiled and decided to take advantage of that soaking tub. As she soaked in hot water, eucalyptus bath salts releasing their soothing scent, watching steam rise in soft clouds, she let herself process everything. For the first time in a very long time, she didn't feel quite so heavy. The weight she carried, the accumulated burden of a lifetime of microaggressions and casual cruelties, hadn't disappeared. It was still there, still real. But it felt just slightly lighter. Just slightly more bearable. Because she had been seen. Really seen. And defended. And loved. If you appreciate stories that show children standing up for what's right, make sure you're subscribed. Hit that bell notification. Have you ever taught a child about fairness and discrimination? Share your approach in the comments. An hour and a half later, they met for dinner in the hotel restaurant. A sophisticated space with soft amber lighting, exposed brick walls, and a live pianist playing soft jazz. The children were on their best behavior, dressed in nice clothes, using napkins without being reminded, saying please and thank you. They ordered appetizers, truffle fries and a cheese board. They ordered entrees, perfectly cooked steaks and fresh pasta. They talked and laughed, making plans for the next 2 weeks. Throughout the meal, the children kept glancing at Miss Simone, checking to make sure she was okay, that she was happy, that she was part of the celebration. When dessert arrived, chocolate cake so decadent even Success's eyes went wide, Excel raised her glass of sparkling cider. To Miss Simone, she said clearly, for being the best nanny in the world. For taking care of us every day. For teaching us to be kind and brave. And for being strong even when people are mean to you. To Miss Simone. Success and Leo echoed enthusiastically. Mr. Harrison raised his wine glass. To Miss Simone. Miss Simone felt tears well up. Happy tears, grateful tears. She let them fall, not caring who saw. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for today. For defending me. For being brave when I couldn't be. Thank you for seeing me. We'll always see you," Excel said firmly. "And we'll always be brave for you. Always." They finished their meal, conversation flowing easily. They returned to their rooms, the children brushing teeth and changing into pajamas, their earlier energy finally depleted. Miss Simone tucked them in one by one. Excel mumbled something about her story about working on it tomorrow. Success asked drowsily if they could get pizza for lunch. Leo simply wrapped arms around Miss Simone's neck. "Love you. Don't ever leave us." "I love you too, sweetheart. Sleep well." When they were all settled, she returned to her room, changed into comfortable pajamas, and sat by the window watching New York's lights sparkle in darkness. Yellow windows and countless buildings, street lights, headlights moving like rivers of light. But she couldn't sleep yet. Her mind was too active, too full of the day's events and their implications. She pulled out her laptop and opened a new document. Maybe Excel's idea of writing a story wasn't just for children. Maybe Miss Simone needed to write her own version. Not a children's story, but her story. The real story of what it felt like to be her in that moment. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long moment before she began typing. "I have spent 38 years learning how to be small. How to take up less space, how to soften my voice, how to make white people comfortable with my presence in their spaces. I have perfected the art of swallowing indignity, of pressing my anger down so deep it becomes a permanent ache in my chest, of smiling when I want to scream." She wrote for over an hour, the words pouring out, raw, unfiltered, honest in a way she'd never been able to be out loud. She wrote about the bread roll and the cold stare. She wrote about every other Ms. Whitmore she'd encountered. She wrote about the exhaustion of code switching, of constantly managing other people's comfort, of never being allowed to be fully human, fully herself. She wrote about the children's defense and what it had meant to her. The complicated emotions, gratitude and shame tangled together. The way it had cracked something open inside her. And she wrote about Excel's question that wouldn't stop echoing. If nobody says anything, how will they know they're wrong? When she finally stopped, her hands were trembling slightly. She read back what she'd written, surprised by the power of her own words when she allowed herself to be completely honest. Maybe this was the beginning of something. Maybe speaking up didn't always have to happen in the moment. Maybe it could happen later, in writing, in conversation, in 1,000 small acts of resistance and truth-telling. She saved the document and titled it, "The Weight of Silence." Then she closed her laptop and finally went to bed, falling into a deep, dreamless sleep. The next morning arrived with golden sunlight streaming through the windows. Miss Simone woke early as always, her internal clock calibrated to the children's needs. She showered and dressed in comfortable clothes, jeans and a soft sweater, casual attire that felt liberating after yesterday's careful attention to appearance. When she opened the connecting door to check on the children, she found all three already awake, sitting cross-legged on Excel's bed in their pajamas, deep in conversation. They looked up when she entered, their faces brightening. "Miss Simone." Leo jumped up and ran to her, wrapping arms around her waist. "We were just talking about yesterday. About the plane." She stroked his hair gently. "Were you? What were you saying?" Excel patted the bed beside her, inviting Miss Simone to sit. "We've been thinking about something. About whether what we did yesterday actually helps. Like really helps." Miss Simone settled onto the bed, curious and touched by their continued engagement with these complex issues. "Tell me what you're thinking." Success spoke up. "We made that one mean lady serve you properly. But there are probably lots of mean ladies and mean men everywhere who treat people unfairly. We can't be on every airplane and in every restaurant and every store to stop them all. So what can we do that actually makes a difference?" Excel added, her serious face troubled. "That's what we were trying to figure out." Leo nodded earnestly. "We want to help. Really help. Not just one time but always." Miss Simone felt her eyes prick with tears. These children, these beautiful, thoughtful, fierce children, were grappling with the limitations of individual action in the face of systemic problems. They were 6 years old and already understanding that one confrontation, however brave, didn't dismantle systems of oppression. "Those are very important questions," she said softly. "And honestly, I don't have all the answers. But I think I think maybe the most important thing you can do is exactly what you're already doing. What do you mean? Excel asked. You're learning to see injustice. You're learning to recognize when someone is being treated unfairly. And you're learning that you have power, that your voices matter, that you can use your position and your privilege to stand up for people who might not be able to stand up for themselves in that moment. That's huge. That's everything. She paused, choosing her words carefully. The truth is you can't fix everything. None of us can. Racism and discrimination are big, complicated problems that have existed for hundreds of years. They're built into systems and institutions. One confrontation on one airplane doesn't change all of that. The children's faces fell slightly, disappointment evident. But, Miss Simone continued, her voice strengthening, every single time someone speaks up, it matters. It matters to the person being defended, I can tell you that from personal experience. It matters to the people watching who see that speaking up is possible, who might be inspired to do the same next time. And it matters to the person doing the wrong thing, even if they don't change immediately. You planted a seed yesterday. Maybe Ms. Whitmore will think about what happened. Maybe she'll be a little more careful, a little more aware. Maybe not. But you did your part. Excel was thinking hard, processing. So it's like, we can't fix the whole ocean but we can clean up our little part of the beach? That's exactly it, Miss Simone said, smiling. That's a perfect way to put it. And if lots of people clean up their parts, eventually the whole beach gets cleaner, Success added, catching on. Exactly. Leo looked up at Miss Simone with those earnest eyes. Will you teach us how to see when people are being unfair? Because sometimes I think I might not notice. I didn't notice anything wrong until Excel pointed it out yesterday. Miss Simone's heart swelled. Of course I'll teach you. We'll learn together. Because honestly, sweetheart, I'm still learning too. Every day, I'm learning what I'm willing to accept and what I need to stand up against. It's a journey, not a destination. Mr. Harrison appeared in the doorway, already dressed for the day, his expression warm as he observed the scene. Miss Simone sitting on the bed surrounded by his 3 children, all of them engaged in this profound conversation. Good morning, he said quietly, not wanting to interrupt. I hope I'm not intruding on something important. We're talking about how to make the world more fair, Excel explained seriously. Not just on airplanes but everywhere. Mr. Harrison smiled and entered the room, settling into the desk chair. That's a conversation I'd very much like to be part of. What have we figured out so far? The children eagerly filled him in on their discussion. The question of scale, the limitation of individual actions, Miss Simone's beach metaphor. Mr. Harrison listened carefully, nodding. Miss Simone is absolutely right. But I want to add something if I may. He looked at each of his children in turn, his expression serious. You 3 have something many people don't have, privilege. Not just because we have money, though that's part of it. But because you're white. Because when you speak up, people listen in ways they might not listen to Miss Simone if she said the exact same words. The children were quiet, absorbing this difficult truth. That's not fair, Success said quietly. No, it's not fair at all, Mr. Harrison agreed. But it's reality. And the question is, what do you do with that privilege? Do you pretend it doesn't exist? Do you feel guilty about it? Or do you use it to amplify voices that aren't being heard, to stand up for people who face consequences for speaking up that you won't face? The third one, Excel said immediately. We use it to help. That's exactly right. And that's what you did yesterday. You used your voices that people listen to demand better treatment for Miss Simone. That's using privilege responsibly. That's being an ally. What's an ally? Leo asked. Mr. Harrison thought for a moment. An ally is someone who stands with people who face unfairness, even when that unfairness doesn't affect them personally. It's choosing to speak up not because you have to, but because it's right. Then we're allies, Success declared. Miss Simone's allies. Forever. Miss Simone's throat felt tight again. She reached out and took Success's small hand. You have no idea how much that means to me. Actually, Excel said thoughtfully, I think we should be allies for everyone who gets treated unfairly. Not just Miss Simone. Anyone we see being discriminated against. That's a wonderful goal, Mr. Harrison said warmly. And I think you're all capable of it. Your mother and I are trying to raise you to be people who make the world better, not worse. People who see injustice and do something about it. What would you teach your children about using privilege responsibly? How would you explain being an ally? Drop your thoughts in the comments. These conversations matter. After breakfast, room service with pancakes and fresh fruit that the children devoured, they got ready for their first full day exploring New York. The children dressed in comfortable clothes and sneakers, buzzing with excitement about visiting the Museum of Natural History. As Miss Simone helped Leo tie his shoes, he looked up at her with a question that had clearly been building. Miss Simone? Can I ask you something kind of hard? Of course, sweetheart. You can ask me anything. Does it hurt your feelings? When people are mean to you because you're black? Miss Simone paused, struck by the directness and emotional intelligence of the question. Yes, she said honestly. Yes, it hurts my feelings. Every single time. Even when you look calm on the outside? Especially then. Because staying calm takes a lot of work. It takes effort to keep all those hurt feelings inside so other people don't see them. Leo processed this, his young face serious. I don't think you should have to hide your feelings. I think if someone hurts your feelings, you should be able to tell them. You're right. I should be able to. But sometimes telling people they've hurt you makes things worse, not better. Sometimes they get angry or defensive. Sometimes they don't believe you. Sometimes. She paused, searching for words a 6-year-old could understand. Sometimes it feels safer to keep those feelings inside, even though that's not really fair either. That's why we have to speak up for you, Leo said with simple certainty. So you don't have to do it alone. Miss Simone pulled him into a tight hug, overwhelmed by this child's capacity for empathy and understanding. Thank you, Leo. Thank you for seeing that. They headed out into the beautiful New York morning, the city already bustling with energy. The subway ride to the Museum of Natural History was an adventure in itself. The children wide-eyed at the crowds, the musicians playing in the stations, the speed of the trains rushing through tunnels. As they walked through the museum, Miss Simone noticed something different about how she was experiencing the day. The usual hypervigilance was still there. She still tracked the subtle glances from other museum goers, still noted the occasional double take when people saw her with the Harrison family. But something had shifted. She didn't feel quite as alone with it anymore. The children stayed close, their hands finding hers frequently, their excitement about the dinosaurs and the planetarium show never making them forget to check in with her. Are you having fun, Miss Simone? Do you want to see the ocean exhibit next? Let's take a picture together in front of the T-Rex. In the Hall of Biodiversity, Excel stopped in front of an exhibit about human genetic diversity. She read the placard carefully, her face serious with concentration, then turned to Miss Simone. It says here that all humans share 99.9% of the same DNA. That we're all basically the same, no matter what we look like on the outside. That's right, Miss Simone confirmed. So people who think skin color makes someone less important are not just mean, they're scientifically wrong, Excel concluded with satisfaction. Exactly. Success joined them, reading over Excel's shoulder. We should tell people that. When they're being racist, we should tell them they're not just being unfair, they're being stupid. Because science proves they're wrong. Mr. Harrison, who had been listening, smiled. That's one approach. Though I might suggest using the word ignorant instead of stupid. Ignorant means they don't know or understand something. It's a little kinder, but it still makes the point. Okay, ignorant then, Success agreed. We'll tell them they're being ignorant and wrong. They moved through the museum, the children absorbed in the exhibits but never losing that thread of awareness about justice and fairness that had been awakened yesterday on the plane. During lunch at the museum cafe, Excel pulled out a small notebook she'd brought in her backpack. I want to start writing that story now. While everything is still fresh in my mind. What are you going to call it? Miss Simone asked. Excel thought for a moment. Maybe, The Day We Learned to Speak Up. Or, The Airplane Lesson. I'm not sure yet. How about 3 Small Voices? Success suggested. Because we're small but our voices were big enough to make a difference. I like that, Excel said, writing it down. 3 Small Voices. By Excel, Success, and Leo Harrison. Leo looked pleased to be included in the authorship. Can we put Miss Simone's name in it too? Since it's about her? We should dedicate it to her, Excel decided. Like real authors do. We'll write, for Miss Simone, who taught us about courage even when we had to be the brave ones for her. Miss Simone's eyes filled with tears. She reached across the table to squeeze Excel's hand. That would be beautiful. Thank you. Excel began writing in her notebook, her careful print covering the page with the beginning of their story. Success and Leo leaned in, offering suggestions, debating word choices, fully engaged in the creative process. Mr. Harrison caught Miss Simone's eye and smiled. You've raised remarkable children, he said quietly. We've raised remarkable children, Miss Simone corrected gently. All of us together. He nodded, accepting the correction. You're right. All of us together. After the museum, they walked through Central Park, the children running ahead on the paths, circling back to Miss Simone and Mr. Harrison, their energy seemingly infinite. They stopped to watch street performers, got ice cream from a vendor, threw pennies in a fountain and made wishes. As the afternoon sun began to slant golden through the trees, they settled on a bench near Bethesda Fountain. The children were finally starting to tire, their running becoming walking, their chatter becoming quieter. Miss Simone sat between Excel and Leo, with Success leaning against Mr. Harrison on the other end of the bench. The sounds of the city surrounded them, distant traffic, nearby conversations, birds calling, water flowing in the fountain. Miss Simone? Excel's voice was soft, almost sleepy. Yes, honey? Yesterday on the plane, were you scared? Like really scared? Miss Simone considered how to answer honestly without frightening them. Yes, I was scared. What were you scared of? I was scared of making things worse. Scared that if I spoke up, I'd be seen as difficult or angry or troublesome. Scared that people would think I was overreacting or playing the victim. Scared of losing my job, losing your trust, losing everything I built over 8 years with your family. That's a lot of scary things, Leo observed. It is. When you're in my position, when you're a black woman in predominantly white spaces, there's a lot to be afraid of. A lot of real consequences for speaking up, for demanding respect, for refusing to accept less than you deserve. But none of those things happened, Excel pointed out. When we spoke up for you, nobody thought you were difficult. Nobody thought you were overreacting. You didn't lose anything. That's because you spoke up instead of me, Miss Simone explained gently. When 3 small white children point out injustice, people listen differently than when I do it. They see you as innocent, as honest, as speaking truth. When I do it, some people see me as threatening or aggressive, even if I say the exact same words in the exact same tone. That's so unfair, Success said, her voice sharp with frustration. It is unfair. But it's also reality. And it's why your voices are so powerful. It's why what you did yesterday mattered so much. They sat in silence for a moment, the children processing these difficult truths about the world they were inheriting. I'm glad we spoke up, Leo said finally. Even if you were scared, even if things could have gone wrong, I'm glad we did it. Because it was the right thing. So am I, Miss Simone said warmly. So am I. As they walked back to the hotel through the evening crowds, Miss Simone found herself thinking about Excel's question from the plane. If nobody says anything, how will they know they're wrong? Maybe the answer was this. Sometimes you have to say something even when it's scary, even when the outcome is uncertain. Sometimes silence is a form of complicity. Sometimes speaking up, or having others speak up for you, is the only way forward. And sometimes you needed 6-year-old children to teach you lessons about courage that you'd forgotten or never fully learned. That evening, after dinner at an Italian restaurant where Leo declared New York pizza, even better than I imagined, they returned to the hotel. The children were exhausted but happy, their faces glowing with the satisfaction of a day well spent. As Miss Simone tucked them in, Excel handed her the notebook. I wrote the first part of our story. Will you read it and tell me if it's good? Miss Simone sat on the edge of the bed and read Excel's careful handwriting. Once upon a time, there were 3 children who loved their nanny more than almost anyone in the world. One day they were on an airplane and they saw someone being mean to her. At first they didn't understand why. But then they realized, the person was being unfair because of the color of their nanny's skin. And the children knew that wasn't right. So even though they were small, even though the unfair person was a grown-up, they spoke up. They used their voices to demand fairness. They used their privilege to help someone they loved. And they learned that sometimes, the smallest voices can make the biggest difference. Miss Simone's hands trembled slightly as she finished reading. Excel, this is beautiful. It's perfect. Really? Really? You captured exactly what happened and why it mattered. Will you help me finish it tomorrow? I want to write about what we learned and what other kids can learn from our story. I would be honored to help you. After the children were asleep, Miss Simone returned to her room and opened her laptop. She pulled up the document she'd started the night before, The Weight of Silence. But now she added a new section. For 38 years I have carried the weight of silence. But yesterday 3 children lifted that weight just for a moment. They showed me that speaking up is possible, that demanding dignity is worthwhile, that I don't have to carry this alone. I don't know if I'll find my voice next time. I don't know if the conditioning of decades can be undone by one incident on one airplane. But I know this: I am seen. I am valued. I am loved. And that knowledge changes something fundamental. Maybe next time I'll speak up for myself. Maybe I'll find the courage these children showed me yesterday. Or maybe I'll need their voices again. Either way, I know I'm not alone. And that makes all the difference. She saved the document and closed her laptop, feeling something close to peace. The next morning, Miss Simone woke to a gentle knock on the connecting door. Miss Simone? Are you awake? Excel's voice called softly. Yes, sweetheart. Come in. Excel entered with her notebook, Success and Leo trailing behind her. We had an idea. We want to perform our story. Perform it? Like a play, Success explained. We each play ourselves. Leo can be Leo, I'll be me, Excel will be Excel. And we need someone to play the mean flight attendant and someone to play you and someone to play Dad. We thought we could record it on Dad's phone, Excel added. And then maybe we could show it at school. In an assembly or something. So other kids can see what happened and learn about standing up to unfairness. Miss Simone felt her chest swell with pride and affection. That's a wonderful idea. Have you talked to your father about it? Not yet. We wanted to ask you first. Because it's your story too. You get to decide if we can tell it. Miss Simone looked at these 3 earnest faces, at the hope and determination in their eyes. They wanted to turn their experience into education, their private moment into public testimony. And suddenly Miss Simone knew her answer. Yes, she said firmly. Yes, we can tell this story. We should tell this story. Because you're right, other children need to learn what you learned. Other families need to have these conversations. And maybe other people like me need to know they're not alone, that there are children, and adults, willing to stand up for what's right. The children cheered, immediately beginning to plan their performance. Who would play which parts? What would they say? How would they make sure the message was clear? Mr. Harrison appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. What's all this excitement about? Excel quickly explained their idea. Mr. Harrison listened carefully, then looked at Miss Simone. Are you comfortable with this? It's your story, your experience. You get to decide how it's shared. Miss Simone took a deep breath. This was it, the moment to choose between continued silence and speaking her truth, even if that truth was being voiced through children's performance. I'm comfortable with it, she said. More than comfortable. I think it's important. I think. She paused, emotion making her voice thick. I think for too long I've let fear and conditioning keep me quiet about experiences like this. If these children can be brave enough to speak up in the moment, I can be brave enough to let our story be told afterward. Maybe it will help someone else find their voice. Maybe it will teach someone else to be an ally. Maybe it will make one person think twice before treating someone with casual cruelty. Mr. Harrison nodded slowly. Then let's do it. And let's do it right. We'll record it professionally. We'll make sure the message is clear and powerful. We'll use this experience to teach others, to start conversations, to make a difference beyond that one airplane cabin. Over the next few days in New York, between museum visits and Broadway shows and walks through different neighborhoods, they worked on the performance. Excel refined the script. Success helped choreograph the movements. Leo practiced his lines until he could deliver them with perfect emotion. They recruited Mr. Harrison to play himself, and they decided to use photos of Miss Simone rather than having someone play her. Because no one could play you as well as you are yourself, Excel explained with her characteristic logic. On their 4th day in New York, they recorded the performance in their hotel suite. Mr. Harrison set up his phone on a tripod. The children took their positions. And they performed their story, simply, honestly, powerfully. Miss Simone watched from behind the camera, tears streaming down her face as she heard her own experience transformed into testimony, her own pain transformed into teaching, her own silence transformed into a call to action. When they finished, the children ran to her immediately. Did we do okay? Did we tell it right? You told it perfectly, Miss Simone said through tears. Absolutely perfectly. That night, Mr. Harrison showed the recording to his wife via video call. Mrs. Harrison watched in silence, her face cycling through shock, anger, pride, and determination. I wish I'd been there, she said when it ended. I wish I could have stood up with you too. You're standing up now, Miss Simone said. By supporting this, by letting your children tell the story, by raising them to see and speak against injustice. That matters more than you know. The next week, they showed the recording to Excel's teacher back in Los Angeles via email. The teacher's response came quickly. This is powerful and important. I would love to show this at our next assembly with your permission. I think our students and our parent community need to see and hear this. Would you be willing? Miss Simone, sitting in the hotel business center with the children and Mr. Harrison, read the email twice. Then she looked at Excel, Success, and Leo. What do you think? Are you ready for other people to see your story? Yes, Excel said immediately. That's why we made it. So people could learn. Then let's do it, Miss Simone said. Let's tell our story. If this story changed how you think about privilege, allyship, or speaking up against injustice, please subscribe and share it. These conversations save lives, change minds, and build better communities. On their last day in New York, they visited the Statue of Liberty, Leo's most anticipated stop. As they stood on Liberty Island, looking up at the iconic statue with her torch raised high, Excel turned to Miss Simone. Miss Simone, what does the poem say? The one on the statue. Miss Simone recited from memory, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Yearning to breathe free, Excel repeated thoughtfully. That's what you were doing on the plane, right? Yearning to breathe free? To be treated like everyone else. Yes, sweetheart. That's exactly what I was doing. And we helped you breathe free, Leo added softly. We helped you be free to be yourself without mean people being unfair. Miss Simone pulled all three children into a tight hug, right there on Liberty Island with tourists flowing around them, with the iconic statue rising above them, with the New York skyline glittering across the water. You did, she whispered. You absolutely did. And I will never forget that. Never. As they boarded the ferry back to Manhattan, Miss Simone looked back at the Statue of Liberty, at that torch raised high, at that symbol of freedom and welcome that didn't always match the reality of American life for people who looked like her. But maybe, just maybe, children like Excel, Success, and Leo would help close that gap. Maybe the next generation would make that promise more real, more accessible, more true for everyone regardless of skin color. It was a small hope. A fragile hope. But it was real. And it was hers. And it was enough. Final question for you. After hearing Miss Simone's complete journey, what's one concrete action you'll take? Will you have a conversation with your children about privilege? Will you speak up next time you witness discrimination? Will you examine your own biases? Don't just watch, act. Drop your commitment in the comments. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to this story. Thank you for believing that change is possible, one small voice at a time. Subscribe, share, and most importantly, be the change. See you in the next story.